Good morning, everybody. Welcome to IndyCar again on the 10th of June. And today I actually wanted to try and refocus minds on what's actually happening in the country today. While we're being distracted by this new Conservative Party contest to find a new leader, a lot of other things are going on in the background which are not receiving as much media attention as they really should be. And I think the first thing we need to really think about is, while this fascinating competition, as it seems to be being portrayed between Boris Johnson and the other 9 candidates in the Tory party leadership election continues to grab the headlines, what else is happening that we're not being told about? Well, the first thing that's happening is that manufacturing organisations, groups and the think tanks which look at manufacturing and represent those industries are warning yet again that the European Union, businesses in the European Union and businesses overseas, particularly in Asia, have now almost given up on buying from UK supply chains, simply because goods manufactured in the United Kingdom, there is no way for these other companies who may rely on such manufactured goods as components for their own products, there is no way that they can rely on those supply chains anymore, because the whole idea of Brexit is creating so much uncertainty that they can't be sure that they will get an uninterrupted supply of components and parts and raw materials. So largely these companies, these overseas companies, are going elsewhere for their component parts, for their supply chain needs. And this is getting worse and worse, despite the fact that British companies had been frantically stockpiling large quantities of manufactured goods, ready to ship them to these overseas customers who rely on those next day supply chains. So this is a clear warning from manufacturing organisations in the UK that there is not just a danger of business hemorrhaging out of the UK, but it's already happened and it's continuing to worsen. This on top of news today that over €1 trillion worth of capital has disappeared from the London economic area and has migrated back to Europe and into the financial systems of the European Union. So in other words, basically capital flight. Money is leaving the UK in large quantities. €1 trillion is a fantastical amount of money to lose from an economy. So while that's also going on, it's been revealed today in the press that the UK economy in the last quarter has contracted. In other words, it's not grown, it's actually shrunk by 0.4%. The 0.4% shrinkage in the economy is an almost complete reversal of the growth figure that we have experienced in the run-up to Brexit. A very low growth figure of under 1%, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's slightly less, but very, very small amounts of growth, now being totally reversed. And this is the first sort of harbinger, the warning sign that Britain is about to slide into a deep recession due to Brexit. So while all of this is happening in the background, all this important information is getting missed by the public, of being directed to watch this ridiculous spectacle of the Tories trying to choose a new leader. And it is a little bit like electing a new captain for the Titanic, who has got to say that he will be prepared to still hit the iceberg and is quite prepared to let the ship go down with all hands as before, as promised before. He's not going to change course. But the end result remains the same: ruin for the economy, contracting economy, manufacturing industry is failing, and businesses are going to go under, jobs are being lost as we speak. And what's happening with the Tory party at the moment is, in their election campaign, we have all of the candidates vying with each other to be as drug-addled as possible, to try and rule themselves out of this bizarre contest, so that Boris Johnson will be the person who ends up probably holding the baby at the end of this. Now, Boris Johnson has today promised to give the wealthiest people in the United Kingdom a tax cut, which is exactly the sort of thing he would do if he was trying to attract the votes of the Conservative Party's membership, who are by and large white, middle class or wealthy, and are only interested really in their wealth and keeping it largely, and making sure that nobody else gets any of it, especially the taxman. So Boris Johnson is probably going to win this hands down, and I think the whole thing is just a pantomime. It's a foregone conclusion. It's all going to happen in a particular way. We all know it's going to happen in a particular way. And the end result will be exactly the same, a Brexit of some sort. And a Brexit of any sort, whether it's hard, soft, or whether it's deal or no deal, makes absolutely no difference to the outcome. Britain is still going to go into recession. Manufacturing industries are still going to close. We've already seen Ford closing its engine plant. We've had Toyota, we've had, who else have we had? Honda, all kinds of manufacturers, Jaguar, Land Rover, all either reducing or closing their manufacturing plants in the UK because they can't compete because of Brexit. It's as simple as that. In a car market that's very, very difficult at the moment because of the new restrictions on diesel cars particularly, and the fact that diesel cars are being phased out, petrol cars are going to be phased out, and the electric cars are going to be phased in, this is a critical moment for the manufacturing industry in cars in the UK, and it's at the wrong time to have Brexit, just at the moment when they're having to deal with that. Also today, it's been revealed that you may remember the story about Hunterston Power Station in Ayrshire, and EDF Energy, who now own and operate that power station, were asking the UK Atomic Energy authorities if they could start the reactors back up, despite the fact that reactor 3 has over 350 cracks in its graphite core, all of which, or any one of which, could lead to a radioactive accident. But on top of that, today we now discovered that reactor 4, which is younger than reactor 3, has also now been discovered to have over 200 cracks in its core. And unfortunately for Scotland, the Hunterston reactors, the Hunterston power stations, although Scotland actually doesn't need the energy they produce because we are awash with renewable energy, that energy is still needed by the UK grid, and it's the United Kingdom that will decide whether or not that reactor is allowed to start up again. The power station itself could have a serious accident because of the numbers of cracks in its core. It's well past its 30-year lifespan. It opened in 1976, so as you can imagine, we are well past its allotted lifespan. And EDF Energy trying to restart a reactor which is so badly cracked, and now a second reactor which is younger and supposedly in better condition has 200 cracks in it. This is not a sensible idea for anybody. Scotland doesn't need the power. There's no reason why the power station needs to be started up. And it certainly would risk all of the central belt of Scotland if something goes wrong with that power station. If there is an explosion or a fire in either or both of those reactor cores, then the radioactive plume would stretch all across central Scotland because of the prevailing winds. And in some cases, depending on the winds, it could pollute almost the entire country with radioactive fallout. Whether or not we have a Chernobyl-style meltdown is immaterial. A leak of radioactive material into the atmosphere can travel for hundreds of miles. So there is no way at the moment that the Scottish Government or Scottish people can stop the Hunterston Power Station being restarted. EDF Energy only needs to get the go-ahead from the United Kingdom's Atomic Energy Authority, and they could restart that reactor tomorrow, regardless of the safety of everybody in the central belt of Scotland, and there would be nothing that we could do about that. Now just think about that for a moment. Is that what you want for your children? Do you want that power station started up with the known risk that it could catch fire or it could explode because a French company, which is what EDF is, wants to extract some more pounds, some more euros out of that ancient reactor core just to feed the English power market, because it is predominantly feeding the English power market. It produces approximately enough power for 1.7 million homes. That's a lot of homes. So it's a big power station, it's a big provider. And we know that the national grid in England is suffering shortages at the moment because they don't have as well developed a wind and tidal energy program as we have. So those are the actual stories that should really be getting covered in the Scottish media today. I also wanted to say something about the Scottish women's football team who competed yesterday against England in the World Cup, first leg of the World Cup. Now Scotland, remember, this is the first ever Scottish women's World Cup team. They've never competed in a World Cup before. And up against a very strong England side who also are finding their feet at the moment. They took a bit of a bashing in the first half, but the second half Scotland looked far more energised. I think we're seeing signs of better things to come from the Scottish side. So I wanted to say well done to the Scottish women's team, because they are the underdogs in this competition. It's the first time they've ever competed at this level. And so they're finding their feet. But second half of that game against England was excellent. And that goal to salvage some Scottish pride towards the end of the match was an excellent goal. And I think if we take that kind of spirit into the game against, is it Japan we're playing next? I think it's a Japanese team. Somebody will correct me on this, but the next game we play, if you take that spirit into it, then I think Scotland could come away with the win and the 3 points. Anyway, that's the IndyCar news for today, but just remember, try and keep your eyes on the important news. Don't be distracted by this puppet show with Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and the other junkies who are running for Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I mean, it beggars belief that you could have coke-addled people running the country, but then George Osborne was a coke-addled politician as well, and look what he did. He basically gave money to the oil companies where every other country taxes them. That just goes to show you the kind of stupid decisions people can make when they are coked up, and goodness knows what other drugs these Tory politicians have been taking in the past that they haven't admitted to. Okay, I'll go now, but I'll see you all again tomorrow, and keep your eyes on the news. Remember to concentrate on the most important things. Don't be distracted by the fluff, and I refer to Boris Johnson here as the fluff. See you later. Bye.